calling our meeting to order at 5:30 sharp. Looking for, let's see, who all do we have here? We've got all 7 of our board members and all of our superintendents, and Ms. Atkinson, Ms. Reagan, Ms. King, Mrs. Zervas. Welcome, everyone. We're going to start with the adoption of our agenda. So I'm looking for a motion to adopt the agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Tony. I need a second.
I'll second.
All of our votes tonight will be by roll call, and I'll try to use the same order. So you could go ahead and unmute and give me your vote. Jim?
Yes.
Carla?
You're muted.
Yeah. If you hover your mouse over your picture, does it give you a chance to take the cross off of the microphone? I'll come back to you, Carla. Tony?
Yes.
Jane?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Shannon? We'll give Carla a second here to see if she can work on her microphone.
Oh, I did it.
Yay!
Yes.
And how do you vote on adoption of the agenda? Did you give us a yes, Carla?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, normally we would go into closed session at this time, but since we're staying in open, we'll move down to public hearings and presentations to and by the board. For this meeting, we had these options were available to email Myra, our board secretary, and we did not have any of those emailed in, so we don't have any presentations on agenda items or questions from the floor tonight. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Our consent agenda is utilized by the Rolla Board of Education as a means of dealing with routine matters which must be considered by the Board of Education but require a minimum of discussion. All Board of Education members receive and review written information supporting the items listed on the consent agenda well in advance of the meeting. While any Board of Education members welcome to remove any item from the consent agenda for separate consideration or discussion for any reason, normally all items on the consent agenda are approved in one motion with a minimum of discussion. Are there any items on there for discussion that need further discussion or need to be removed? Okay, seeing none, I'm looking for a motion to accept items A through I on the consent agenda.
I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda items A through I.
Thank you, Jim. Could I have a second?
Second from Jane.
Thank you, Jane. That's okay. Thanks, Shannon. Okay, and how do you vote, Jim?
Yes.
Carla? I'll come back. Tony?
Yes.
Jane?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Shannon?
Yes.
Carla?
Yes.
Thank you. Myra, did you catch all those?
Yes, thank you.
Great. Okay, we're moving into new business. Professional development allocation revision. Mrs. Atkinson will present the professional development allocation revision.
Okay, so as most of you are aware, school districts are required to spend at least 75% of 1% of their basic formula monies for the professional development committee expenditures. So for fiscal year 20, that amount should be $142,000 roughly. Now, as of April 7th, the district has spent only $123,000, and we're expecting quite a bit in refunds due to cancellations of conferences and trainings. That amount I've not been able to quantify. So fortunately, House Bill 1606 allows that in any fiscal year in which the amount appropriated and expended for transportation is less than 25% of allowable costs, a school district may allocate an amount less than 1% of the basic formula monies received for professional development. Now, the amount allocated cannot be less than 1/2 of 1% of the basic formula funding. So for us, that would be approximately $71,000, which we can easily meet for fiscal year 20. Since transportation costs this year, or funding for this year, is approximately 17% of allowable costs, I would like the board to approve modifying our professional development allocation to no less than 1/2 of the 1% of the basic formula monies received. Are there any questions?
Everybody understand the change there?
And I would make the motion that we approve as presented.
I'll second
Thank you.
that.
Thank you, Brian. How do you vote? Jim?
Yes.
Carla?
Yes.
Yes. Tony?
Yes.
Jane?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Shannon?
Yes.
Very good. Thank you, Mrs. Atkinson. We'll move on to the fiscal year 21 preliminary budget and salary information. Mrs. Atkinson will present an update for the FY21 budget.
Give me just a moment while I share my screen and get the presentation going. Okay, before I start, can I have somebody confirm that you can see the presentation?
We got it.
I got it.
Thank you. Okay, so this evening's presentation is meant to update you on the current status of the state budget and how it will affect the district's budget for next fiscal year, in addition to an update on the cost of salaries and benefits moving forward. As you know, budget development takes place over several phases. So back on January 9th, you approved the supply, textbook, and equipment budget. This evening, after this presentation, Dr. Dare is going to walk through the buildings and grounds budget with you. The next board meeting, we'll go through and get an approval for salary recommendation, and then on June 11th, we'll finalize the budget. So looking at the state budget general revenues for this year, through March, things have been looking pretty good, actually. General revenue collections are up, individual income tax are up over last year. Refunds, however, are up, so that's actually a negative impact on general revenues. Sales tax and corporate income taxes are also up. All of those are expected to drop dramatically over the next few months. And there's an estimate of an economic downturn and could see a shortfall of about $640 million at the state level for current fiscal year between now and June. So House Bill 2 is what funds the Department of Education. As you can see here, I have not removed the question marks that I had in my presentation that was sent to you last Friday because the legislature has not returned to session just yet. We're also unsure of when they do return, I believe it's going to be next week, if they're going to be able to get a budget passed before May or even early June. So there's still a lot up in the air. The governor had already made some recommendations, but that's going to have to be completely rewritten, and they're going to have to go back to the drawing board for that. So looking at our own district budgeted revenues by source, you can see here that the basic formula is our top revenue source, followed closely by property taxes. Let's just go over the property taxes. As you recall, that's the assessed valuation times the tax rate times historical collection rate to equal the budgeted property taxes. So using the July 1st, 2019, or 2020 rather, assessed valuation of $430,700, we're looking at decreasing the collection rate from our average rate of 96.5% to 93.5%. The reason behind that is going forward into next fiscal year, we are expecting to have trouble, having people, or rather, possibly have trouble paying their taxes due. And so what I did is I went back to the 2008 economic crisis and saw what our average collection rate was during those few years, and it was between 93 and 94%. So I've updated our projections for next year to 93.5% collections. When I do that, we'll see an operating revenue decrease of about $160,000. Here you can just see the local property tax trend over the last several years. And then we'll get into the foundation formula and the definitions of that to start with. So we start with the SAT, or the state adequacy target. That's determined by looking at approximately 150 performance districts and the average amount those districts spend to educate their students. We then look at average daily attendance and then weighted average daily attendance. So that is the average daily attendance multiplied by a certain threshold percentage to determine if there's a higher concentration of students and subgroups that typically require more resources. And if so, that number is multiplied by a given weight, and the district will receive additional funding for those students. We then have the dollar value modifier, and that's the cost of living adjustment to provide more money to districts in areas of the state with a higher cost of living than the state median. Then we have local effort, and that's basically our local property tax revenue. And that amount is set at the 2005 amount of local effort, so that does not change. To calculate the basic formula, it's weighted average daily attendance times the SAT times the dollar value modifier, less that 2005 amount of local effort to equal our state funding. The SAT is recalculated every 2 years. For next year, it actually was calculated to be $6,330. However, state law prohibits the SAT to be decreased. So for the next 2 years, it will remain flat at $6,375. However, because of the state of the economy, we're anticipating having withholdings from our foundation formula. So I'm considering budgeting only $6,308 for the SAT for fiscal year 21. The weighting thresholds I spoke of earlier are for free and reduced lunch students, special education population students, and English language learners. And you can see here those thresholds are also recalculated every 2 years. For the foundation formula trend over the last several years, you can see here, when I reduced the anticipated SAT down to $6,308 for next year, we're expecting a decrease of about $490,000. We then have Prop C. That's the 1% statewide sales tax. It is distributed based on prior year weighted average daily attendance. You see here for our current year, we were estimating to receive maybe $1,049. That's what we had been told about a year ago. Not being real comfortable with that. That was a pretty robust figure. We budgeted for $1,009. For next year, we're being told it might reach $1,065. Of course, everything has really changed, so I'd like to budget $1,015 for weighted ADA. And when I do that, the budgeted amount for Prop C is going to decrease by about $185,000. So here, looking at those major revenue sources, you can see the total decrease from fiscal year 20 budget to fiscal year 21 budget is $835,000. So before I move on to expenditures, are there any questions on revenues?
Kendra, quick question. Do you see any increase in free and reduced lunches for next year?
I have to pull up the calculation. I don't remember offhand. If I am thinking correctly, our FRL has actually decreased slightly over the last couple of years. Dr. Deere, do you recall, have looked at that with me as well. Do you recall what our free and reduced lunch counts have been?
So they've been fairly steady. They have decreased a little bit this year. I think, Brian, if I understood you correctly, you're asking if we anticipate those may go up in the next year.
Yeah.
I would say that's entirely possible, and those can change at any given time. So, you know, if people are able to return to work, you know, that may affect that, but certainly would be a possibility. I would not expect it to be a major impact on the full budget itself because we'll already meet the threshold.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Deere. Any other questions before I move on? Okay. So our budgeted operating expenditures, as you're aware, are 80% attributed to salaries and benefits. So looking at that for next fiscal year, just to operate the salary schedule, so movement on the schedule, which is an average increase of 1.3%, has a cost of $457,500. For every percent we increase the base, it's a cost of $314,200. And at this point, we're looking at a budgeted increase to insurance of 7%, which is an increase of $289,000. We're hoping for the insurance that we can do an actual increase of only 3 to 5%. We won't have more data until August when we make that decision. The plan year starts October 1st. For budgeting purposes, I would like to keep that increase at 7%. We still have another few months of data to gather. Our fund balances, which I'll get to here in just a moment, have increased $607,000 since October 1st. So we're not wanting to make any structural changes to our plans for next year. Our fund is in good shape. So that's really good. There's a lot of unknowns with the COVID-19 pandemic and what that might do to the cost of insurance claims in general. Right now, we can probably anticipate having our fund continue to increase for just a little while, given that there are no elective surgeries happening, probably a decrease in kind of non-emergency emergency room visits, that type of thing. But I think in the long run, we could see a drastic increase. And this is just a visual trend of our percentage changes, not dollar amount, percentage changes of our budgeted premiums versus the actual premiums. You can see that we typically budget more than we actually increase, and then what our fund balance has done over the years. So looking at our operating balances, for fiscal year 20, we currently have a budgeted fund balance of 21.74% as of June 30th. That's what we're budgeted for. But as you know, we typically incur less expenditures and our revenues come in a little bit better, primarily because we budget so conservatively. So at this time, I'm estimating that our unrestricted fund balance will be closer to 30% come June 30th. Here you can just see the two comparisons. And then looking at the fund balance, if we should increase the base by 1% or not do a base increase at all over the next few years. And of course, those ending fund balances are assuming that we end this year at 30.17%. So are there any questions? Dr. Zales, did you want to add anything here before I move on to the health and safety closure and some of the CARES Act data?
Yes. We met with the Central Office Advisory Committee yesterday, just in this format, as we typically do. Shared this presentation with the administrative team on Monday. Walked through this presentation with the teachers that represent our staff on the Central Office Advisory Committee and had a good meeting with them. I think they're cognizant of the challenges that are ahead. I would tell you that when we got down to the end of the meeting talking about consensus recommendations, which is typically what occurs, that it's a couple things are conceivable. One, that we may ask for a second May board meeting, since we have one scheduled for May 7th, to be able to take advantage of as much information as we possibly can. I know that Kendra and Craig and Kyle were part of the MASA meeting on budget yesterday with the CARES Act that you'll talk about in a little bit. There's a lot of moving parts. I also said it's conceivable that there'd be a second issuance of amended contracts, since it's likely that there'll be a special session held by the governor, and we'll know more budgetarily, into the summer months. That's happened before. Ironically, I did have a conversation with Leonard Westbrook, who many of you probably know, but we worked together 20 years ago there at central office, and I vividly remember times when we did issue a second contract in the summer because there were uncertainties as part of state budget. So our balances are there for us to kind of ride these uncertainties, and I would say we probably have the most uncertain uncertainties that we've had in the time I've been in central office. We were humming along pretty good economically, and this issue's really kind of turned us on a dime. So we said we would meet with our staff one more time. We typically meet at the end of the month of April. Our corresponding dates are still intact, and good feedback from them last night. I received a few text messages and emails from staff, so I think they're on board. They've communicated out to their respective staff members, so happy to answer any other questions before Kendra moves on. Okay, I'll take the silence as an affirmative. Kendra?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Dallas. Okay, so a few budget considerations for health and safety closure that we're experiencing right now. There's kind of a perception of cost savings due to we're not ordering food service, food supplies and food, custodial supplies, classroom supplies. Of course, not using so much in transportation and fuel. There's not as much maintenance happening. Hopefully, we're going to experience HVAC savings since the buildings are vacant, and I can only assume that the thermostats have been set accordingly. However, while all of those are kind of true statements that there might be some cost savings there, a majority of our supplies have already been ordered for the year, so there's that. But also on the flip side of it, we will likely have a reduction in funding for transportation, for food service. We're not serving as many meals, and we get reimbursed based on those. And in addition to that, our Prop C, which is that sales tax I was talking about earlier, likely is going to drop drastically in the next couple of months. Classroom Trust Fund, that funding comes from the casinos, which are currently closed. And then, of course, we are expecting some basic formula withholdings even before the end of this year. So in addition to that, we are fortunate enough that we are continuing to pay all the salaries and benefits to our staff to keep everybody whole throughout this school year. So I'm not sure that we're really going to see a cost savings overall, but I just kind of wanted to address that. Are there any questions about that? Are you guys hearing anything, or want to clarify anything for you?
Kendra, I just appreciate you mentioning it because it has been mentioned to me a couple of times recently. So thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, so then we have the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security, or the CARES Act, that was passed recently. How that's going to affect K-12 education is that they've allocated $13.5 billion in emergency relief funds for K-12. Missouri is expected to receive approximately $208 million. And it will be distributed based on the district share of Title I funds. There's going to be an additional amount, $3 billion of discretionary emergency K-12 funding. Missouri is going to receive approximately $54 million. It will be based on local need. That amount of money will have to be applied for, the way I understand it, and it's up to the governor's discretion for how that is spent. We've been given some guidance on how that amount of money can be spent, the emergency relief funds, our portion of that $208 million. We're anticipating it to be close to $790,000, but we have not received official word on that. We also haven't received official word on how those funds can be spent. Right now, it looks like there are 12 allowable uses for that. The 12th one is the most broad use, which is defined as other activities that are necessary to maintain the operation of and continuity of services in local education agencies and continuing to employ existing staff at the agency. So once we get more guidance on that, we can talk more about how we plan to spend those funds. But are there any questions regarding the CARES Act and how it may or may not affect our district?
Now, Kendra, this is Jim.
Yes.
Can you give some guidance again on when the local need information will be out?
Yeah, so we're hoping in the next week that we'll get more guidance from the Department of Education. So I know a week ago they said in about 2 weeks, so I'm hoping just any time now.
Thank you.
Kendra,
Yes.
could I just add, just because I know it's been a question from some, but for those emergency relief funds, one of the contingencies, one of the requirements for the district is that we continue to pay our staff. That's a requirement to be eligible to receive those funds from the federal government. So if you're asked that question, that is a required piece that we are doing.
Thank you, Dr. Dare. Okay, anything else before I close up the presentation?
Kendra, I would just close and with the board that where we landed with the staff yesterday was movement only on the schedule as an initial thought. So the budget impact on her presentation would be minus the percentage increase on the base. And as she stated, hopeful 3 to 5% increase on the insurance. You can always come back later in the summer and you choose to address increases in salaries, but right now our conceptual plan with the staff has been movement only for degrees earned in years of experience.
Okay, any other questions or comments regarding the FY21 preliminary budget? We'll move on to another piece, the FY21 building and grounds update. Dr. Dare will present that. It was sent to us in the packet. Everybody have that?
All right, thanks, Charla. So it is in your packet. Starts on page 9, which is a little ways into your packet because there were some late additions there. But before we get into that, I'm not going to read this to you. Obviously, it's several pages of spreadsheet, and that would be very boring. But just in case, it kind of remind everyone and give you a little background. This is information that is collected from a variety of sources. We do take input from the staff through their building administrators, from our maintenance personnel. It is in full support of our long-range facility plan and our school improvement planning processes. Ultimately, using the information that we gather, looking at wants versus needs and our historical data for maintaining our facilities, our goal with this is simply to maintain and improve our facilities. That's a high mark from our community. They expect that from us, and we want to make sure we're providing the best educational facilities for our students. So my plan here is to go through these sheets. I'll call out some generalities and some things that are maybe a little different than what they've been in the prior years. But certainly feel free to ask questions if you have any as we go through. Starting on page 10, this is district-wide. A lot of these items will be annual ongoing expenditures. So for instance, inspections for things such as bleachers, elevators, fire systems, those kind of things. Minor repair parts, looking at playgrounds, doors, windows, mowers, our equipment that we have in the district. Service contracts for heat and air controls, elevator contracts, pest control, those type of things. So I'm not going to read those to you by individual line item. If you go on over to page 11, there's a few items to point out that are a little different at the bottom of that sheet. So you'll see a plow mentioned. That's an item we use a line item every year. Typically it's either a salt spreader or a plow, so that's part of our snow removal processes. This year it would be a plow for the service truck that we bought this year. The Genie lift is an item that's an addition for this year. It's in place of where we would normally purchase a mower. All of our mowers seem to be in good operating condition, and we're having no problems there. The Genie lift, however, is not in good condition, and we are having problems there, so it seems like a good time to replace that. And then the service truck. That's an item we look to do and keep those in rotation. That was increased a little bit. It is difficult to find good used service trucks. They're very popular, and trucks retain their value. So we raised that to $20,000 this year, and we think we'll be able to do what we need to do there. Looking at page 12, that's the request from Lyman. You'll see the normal operating expenditures at the top. The other projects are some blind replacements and a whiteboard replacement. Nothing out of the ordinary there. Page 13 is Mark Twain. The playground perimeter that you'll see there at the bottom is edging around the playground. We have to watch those for rot and decay, so that's replacing a section of that. Page 14 is Truman. You'll see playground repairs there for $15,000. If you're familiar with the Truman Playground at all, on the back side, what I call the big area, it's quite a bit into the side of the hill. It takes a big area out of that hillside back there. It's almost entirely done with railroad ties and those types of barriers. We have a lot of issues retaining the soil structures and the water, and a lot of that's decaying and tilting in, for lack of a better word. So what we have done is we've talked to the masonry program at RTI. Mr. Pilkington has taken his students over. They've measured, turned it into a student project. So what they're looking at doing is removing all of those timbers and going with a concrete wall with stem walls to support it around that entire area. So what this $15,000 represents would be material costs for them to do that project. Page 15 is middle school. Again, you'll see the normal upkeep things at the top. At the bottom, a few things, some tile replacements, a few whiteboards, some parking lot repairs, and then you'll see an area for some dugout work at the softball field. We did the other side last year, or this year rather, so we would do the other piece of that next year. Page 16 is junior high. You'll see just some basic restroom upgrades, and then there's a computer lab movement. We're going to shift one of the computer labs to a room that would be better suited for that in a better location, and so that's to take care of a few things with electricity and some cabinetry, and replacing the boiler door. That was something noted by our insurance inspection that they requested that we address. Page 17 is the high school. A couple of things there at the top. You'll see a drainage piece for the soccer field. That's a carryover from this year. With weather patterns and some things that we ran into this year, we were going to impact the season, and we didn't want to do that, so we carried that one over. But that's to address some excess water that's pooling on the what would be the east side. The bottom there, again, some whiteboards, window shades, those types of things. And then you'll see a closet for a data piece. That's something that we've been trying to do throughout the district. And this would, again, just separate that out so we can be more secure with our technology systems. Page 18 is RTI. Again, at the bottom there, you'll see a couple of items I'll point out to you. There's some electric upgrades for some equipment changes in a couple of the labs. So that's the electric for the lathe and some electric for the HVAC lab. And then a few other little maintenance and upkeep items, whiteboard and a sink. Not much at RTC on page 19, just a few repairs to the parking lot area out here and some painting. Page 20 is just a basic line item hold in case we have any custodial maintenance needs, custodial closets, custodial equipment, those kind of things, just in anticipation. Page 21 is the central office. Again, nothing major there. A few plumbing and lighting repairs. That's just a line item. And then some paint. We try to take advantage with people moving offices and Mr. Hounds moving, and that we'll try to touch up some paint and take care of a few of those things. Page 22 is the transportation maintenance facilities. The only thing we were looking at there's a door in between the offices and the shop area that needs to be replaced. Again, that was a door identified by our insurance inspection. They want us to upgrade the fire rating on that door. Page 23 and 24, these are the areas that we kind of look at as the bigger picture projects. So I'll go through these in a little bit of detail. For Wyman, you'll see some areas about the front with the sidewalk. It says resloping, but what that actually looks like is a drain on the back side of the sidewalk next to the building to help get the water away from the building. So that'll just be a cut in the sidewalk with a grate to pull the water out. Asbestos removal goes along with the tile replacement. It's not so much the tile as it is the mastic under the tile, but that's something we just try to do as we can as we go through. And then some additional and replacement and some additional fencing on the playground to help make sure we're keeping the kids secure. Mark Twain, LED lighting upgrade for the cafeteria. Again, that's something we try to do in general areas throughout the district to help save on energy cost, and replacing their shed for their lawnmower and such outside. We have a roof replacement schedule at the middle school. That's part of our ongoing schedule of roof replacements. And some painting. Junior high, there's a pipe installation. This will be the phase 1 of 3. Again, this is from our insurance inspectors to help with condensation and heat loss throughout the system there. And a repair to the gym floor. We've had a little swelling in the gym floor, so that will take care of that issue. High school, again, a roof replacement. You'll see a replacement for the alley doors. We've held some of the door replacements over pending the outcome of the bond issue. This is one that we feel like we can't wait on. We need to go ahead and get addressed. It's used heavily and they're in poor shape. They can't get parts for the system blocking mechanisms and stuff that are there. The wall for the old nurse's office is an effort to change the location for the SRO. They're going to bring the SRO up into that main hall so that Mr. Gibbs Officer Gibbs is closer to the student populations and closer to the office in case they need him. At RTI, you'll see a couple of items there. The first one I want to explain is the skid steer, and you'll notice it says 1/2. So what that is actually from our masonry department. The masonry program at RTI is looking to get a skid steer to do with their projects. So this would be the cost for the skid steer, the bucket, forks, backhoe attachment, and a broom attachment. The state, they will qualify for a 50-50 grant from the state. So this is our half of that program. So the maintenance department will have access to use that, but the masonry department will be in charge of it. Probably the neatest piece about that is Rick will be certified to be an instructor. So the students in that program can be certified as operators. So when they graduate, they'll have that certification to take with them to the job. We think that's a good addition. It'll pay for itself in a short time. Moving on over to page 24, we're about to wrap up here. You'll see at RTI an explosion-proof valve. That is a required addition for our ventilation and dust collection system, primarily through the wood manufacturing program. It's basically to make sure that through that dust and the sawdust and things that get caught up in that system that they don't overheat. So it allows expansion so that there's no explosions or fire. It'll kick the force out. That is something, again, through our inspections that we're required to do. You'll see a little asphalt repair there, and then here, again, a storage building, and we are looking to move the Learning Center from RTI over here to RTC, so a little room renovation there where the dental program used to be. So all in all, you'll see there's a slight increase from last fiscal year to the tune of about $16,000 overall. Really, the $24,000 for that explosion valve is the vast majority of that. Now, I went through that pretty quickly, but be happy to answer any questions or revisit anything if you'd like.
Thank you, Dr. Dare. Anybody have questions for him or anything else that you noticed on that budget that you need to ask about?
Yeah, Kyle, this is Jim.
Yes, sir.
I'm just going to make a suggestion that I normally make, is that on the roof repairs that you note on the spreadsheet what section that is from our master plan, so we can track that 20 years from now.
Yes, sir. We keep an updated set here, and then Patrick will have a set over at the maintenance shed. We have been doing
But if we can put it in the spreadsheet, then we would have that in our minutes.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, we can do that.
The color and the year, or I think, is how they were identified on the plans in the master
In the plan,
plan.
yes, sir. Yep.
Yep.
A reference back to the facility plan.
Yep.
Okay.
I don't need to know it now, just for, yeah.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions for Dr. Dare? Okay, I'm looking for a motion to approve the FY21 Building and Grounds budget.
I'll make
I'll
the
make that
motion.
I heard Jim. Jim, I'll take you as the motion. I need a second.
I'll second.
And that was Carla, your video's gone. I'm not sure where you went.
Oh, sorry.
She's hiding.
Okay.
So that was Jim who made the motion. Carla seconded. And how do you vote? Jim?
Yes?
Carla?
Yes.
Tony?
Yes.
Jane?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Shannon?
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. Just call your attention to our next, our Board of Education future dates. Our next meeting is May 7th. And as Dr. Zales mentioned, we may have to add a meeting. We're not real sure yet. But for certain, we have the June 11th meeting and the June 30th meeting. So just make sure those are on your calendar. I see action next to that, Myra. I think those are already approved dates, right?
They are. I just left it in case we had to make any changes or additions tonight.
Great, thank you. Okay, I'm going to move on down to old business. Under Long Range Facility and Program Update, Dr. Dare and Dr. Zales are going to update us on things like our learning plans, our food distribution, and before they start, I just want to give a big thank you on behalf of the board out to our staff. Everyone from our bus drivers to custodians to our teachers, everybody's relearning everything, including our central office staff, right? We
Yes.
appreciate very much all of the extra effort that's going into school still being in session, and it's being done a new way. So if you guys want to go ahead and give us an update.
Yeah, and Mr. Hounsome will too, because we'll include some information on the learning plans. As we've been doing for quite some time, we've just substituted, since it is part of our safety is part of our long-range facilities planning process, we would just substitute this health and safety update in this placeholder. The governor did today extend the stay-at-home parameters to May 3rd, which does not impact us. As you well know, that school is closed. Our last day of school is May 21st. We have put out some information just today on the changes to some of our plans. I put out a letter last week on Friday, before Good Friday, talking about prom, graduation, summer school, kindergarten, pre-K registration, meal plans, and learning plans. So we'll kind of touch on those, and just keep in mind that everything is disseminated through our district website, first through school messenger and then through social media outlets. And the information relative to specific buildings and grade levels comes from the buildings themselves and the building principal as lead. We're trying to eliminate too many people having their hand in the communication pool, so to speak. So thank you, Mrs. Jameson, for the comments. Mr. Houseman has scheduled a weekly meeting with the administrative team via Google Meets, and we're able to touch base frequently with them. We do have plans in place, as mentioned, with some specific dates regarding prom. The idea being that we would give first contingency, second and third contingencies, depending upon when the stay-at-home order is lifted, but with the caveat that we just won't return to mass amounts of people in our facilities. Almost certain that that will not happen. So Friday for prom, June 12th, with graduation. Sunday, June 14th is the first date. If we're not able to do that, it's a second date of Friday, July 10th, with graduation on Sunday, July 12th. And then third, a prom for the 31st of July, with graduation on August 2nd. Keep in mind that there'll have to be enough time in between each of those contingencies to communicate with people and as to which plan we're operating under, but we at least wanted to lock in those dates for those people that might be able to travel, particularly for families that want to come here and be a part of some kind of celebration. We will most likely, well, I can almost guarantee we will not be at the Gail Bowman for graduation. It looks like it'll be our stadium outside at the high school with a contingency for weather indoors in the gymnasium. Having said that, you know that we can't fit the number of people in our gymnasium and our football field that we can in the Bowman, and frankly, we probably shouldn't anyway. So it'll be a different look. Those details will be worked out. Dr. Pritchett and his leadership team are kind of working through those things now, but we're trying to keep as much normalcy for our seniors as we possibly can. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Hounsome regarding the learning plans, and then Dr. Dare can talk about the food distribution, and we'll wrap up with any questions you guys might have for us.
Dr. Zales, just a few things. Dr. Zales mentioned we are meeting with the administrative staff every Monday, and they in turn are meeting with their leadership teams and at times full building staff on a weekly basis. And our goal is to continue to try and strike a good balance with the learning plans that we're sending out, and sending out quality resources that families can use and that kids can access to keep learning moving forward as much as we can, while trying not to overload families and cause additional stress during this time. So that's been our goal. Our approach has been to try our best and then listen to the feedback that we're getting to the teachers and to the administrators, and then adjust wherever we need to. And I think we've been doing that. We've tried to focus on access for all. We know there are some of the community that can access all of our online resources with no problem. However, there are many that can't as well. So we have tried to make all our learning plans have multiple options for those families who have reliable internet access, and then also options for those who don't. So we have made available print packets, and buildings have a variety of methods for distributing those out to students, and then also the ability for students to return those. And that goes all the way up to RTI, who's making packets available to 10 sending school districts. So there are a lot of needs and a lot of balances that we're trying to strike. And we will continue to adjust that as the weeks go on here. But I'm very pleased with the work that the staff and teachers and principals and everyone have tried to do to try and make this a meaningful time for all students here. We did emphasize to principals and all teachers about the importance of continuing to try and reach out and make contact with families. As this goes on for 5 or 6 weeks, the inclination to maybe have some families lose touch or maybe drop off, we don't want that to happen. We want to continue to keep reaching out. So I think you'll see that across the district over these next few weeks, is us continuing to try and make contacts with those families. One interesting thing is, our school district is not closed. So here in the last few weeks, we have enrolled new students into the district with families that have moved into the community. That's a different kind of first day of school and a different kind of meeting your teacher, and that has created some challenges. But we are taking new students at this time. It has slowed down, but that does still occur. So in addition to academics, I wanted to mention also some of the work that schools are doing observances, particularly at the high school level. You may have seen some of the things around the community, the light up night. You might see some of the signs in athletes' yards. We've always said that this school district is more than just academics. Kids find their place in many places, and it could be fine arts programs or athletic activity, athletic teams, or career and technical education programs. And I think all of them are trying to do their best to recognize those kids who are missing out on perhaps their senior year this year, which can be pretty emotional. So trying to do everything they can to recognize all the years that those kids have put in and the work that they've done, and make sure that they know they're appreciated and that we understand what they and their families are going through. This can be a very difficult end to the school year here. So I appreciate what all the schools are doing in trying to recognize those students. Just so you know, we have also started adding in, thinking about next year. It's amazing. It seems like every day I get a phone call from a principal asking about, this is usually the time of year that we do this activity that sets us up for next year. How are we going to do that this year? So we are tackling those as they come. Principals are also starting to plan how we're going to handle all of the typical end-of-year activities, like kids emptying out their lockers. When we left, the lockers are still full. The desks, kids still have all of their belongings in their desks and classrooms. So schools are starting to send out plans for how we're going to get all of that back to families. Dr. Ray sent one today. Lyman is starting next week. And other schools will be following soon. So we are trying to manage all of those things. Last thing I have, of course, one of the big questions hanging over us right now is what we're going to do for summer school. In the massive webinar that we participated in this week, Jason Hoffman from Jeff City was one person presenting on the webinar. He sits on the DESE Summer School advisory committee that they've put together. His indication was the DESE should be coming out soon, as in, I thought maybe the end of this week, perhaps next week, with some guidance on how schools should be thinking about summer school this year. Typically, our schedule has been seated and online classes in June, and then online classes only in July. Maybe something gets flipped this year. We are still planning on moving forward with online classes in June, credit-bearing online classes, which we've already got built, which we used last year. Those aren't new. We may expand some of the online offerings that we offer in June, but I think my feeling is, I'd like some guidance from you. Our hope is to offer some type of seated summer school this summer, whether the timing is different, whether it looks different, but I think it's important to do if we can. But we'll look to DESE for some guidance on that, and then also obviously just watch the governor in the state of Missouri and what's going to be allowed. But it is very much up in the air, but here pretty soon we'll start communicating out our full expectation to do credit-bearing online classes the month of June as usual. So those are the notes I had about the learning plans and kind of plans moving forward, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have about those.
Mr. Howsam, I did want to add, the other avenue that we just added, has been working with Donald Dodd at Phelps County Focus. We also have supplements in the Phelps County Focus, and also offered the ability for a subscription to families that we would take care of, and we've had north of 350 take advantage of that Phelps County focus. So yet one more avenue for people to access supplemental learning plans. So we appreciate their help.
Yeah, we appreciate greatly them reaching out to us, trying to get something in place that we could help families with. So we appreciate that a lot.
I just have a couple of things. One, I've received several comments about just how well communication has been through you guys' administration. So thank you for that. Lots of good comments out there regarding that. The other thing, there was some questions about library books too, how to return those. So if you can keep that in mind. And then the other thing was the community, they give out scholarships. And how do you guys have any idea what that would look like?
So I made a note here to just make sure that we address library books. The scholarship applications are still going on. So the counseling department at the high school is continuing to push out scholarship applications that kids are filling out online. There are still some due dates coming. My assumption is once all of those due dates hit, I think the committee will be operating much like we are. They'll be having virtual meetings. They'll be able to have all the applications there in front. Our process now is kids go in through Google Classroom and submit their applications and essays so that the committees have all of their information. My assumption is they'll work online just as we are, and that we'll announce that, I assume, virtually in some way. Virtually, I mean electronically in some way. We'll have to make those announcements. But I know the process is still going on. We'll have to see what it looks like in the end.
Yeah, Carla, we won't have a scholarship night for sure. And we did ask Jim that, Dr. Pritchett that earlier, so he did say exactly what Mr. Hounsome said. A lot of those were already in, and they were in process and working through some of those even before a closure.
I really like the idea of having some sort of seated summer school classes for a couple of reasons. Number one, it does bring us back to some sort of normalcy. And it's a bit of a dry run for what next year would look like, because there's going to be some things that are going to have to be in place regardless of how this thing ends up. So I think it's a great idea.
We're trying. We'll see how it goes and see what kind of plans we can make, but that's certainly our goal.
Dr. Dare, you want to talk about food service and any of those other, how those things are going?
Sure. So we did make a couple of adjustments since the last meeting, two major adjustments, I guess, in part due to just an effort to try to limit our staff and our contact with the community, trying to protect everyone in that line. But also, as you can imagine, our supply chains and our delivery systems and all of those have changed substantially. And so just trying to accommodate everyone. We've also seen a pretty good increase in the number of people coming for meals, which is great, but also, adds to some of those challenges. So the two big changes we made, we did eliminate Wyman as a pickup spot. When we discussed the need to cut down to 2 building sites for pickup, junior high has had the highest traffic level, probably because it's just middle of town, a little easier access potentially. Truman has had quite a bit of walk-up business, so to speak. So a lot of the students are walking down, and we did not want to eliminate that. Wyman had been pretty much a drive-up. And we also have a couple of bus stops relatively close to the Wyman location. So we felt like Wyman was the one that made sense to eliminate. We've actually had some good feedback on that. Some of the parents kind of pushed them to the bus stops, which they found to be more convenient anyway. So to my knowledge, we've not had any negativity on that. Again, in trying to limit our contact, we've reduced to pickups on Monday and Wednesday only. So on Monday, each child receives 2 lunches and 2 breakfasts. And on Wednesday, they receive 3 lunches and 3 breakfasts. And we are, the state did change the guidelines. There was a waiver through the USDA. The child does not have to be present. So we do have some folks who are picking up for neighbors and some of those things, and people have been really good to communicate to us what they're doing so that, we can try to maintain, our responsibility to maintain the integrity of the program. And so I appreciate everyone being willing to work with us and communicate to us what they're doing so that we can accommodate them. But I am very pleased to tell you, and I would echo the comments from everyone else, our staff have done a great job, and I appreciate the community and the parents and their patience and their response to our programs. You know, we have served meals now through tomorrow, which equates to 13 school days, essentially, 13 weekdays anyway. But just this month, we have served just under 14,000 meals. And so if you divide that out between the 13 days, we're averaging about 1,075 meals per day. So we're feeding a lot of kids, and we're very proud of that. I'm very grateful for the staff and the work that they're doing. Any questions on any of that?
I would just add too that, you know, we're working closer with the faith-based community too, and the Friday Backpack program is still operational. So the days that we're not operating, they can, and there's more opportunity outside even our district. And there's several things that probably have some staying power from what we're doing during this time, and rekindling a relationship with the faith-based community in terms of services like this, I think, is a good thing.
I do have a comment about that number of students we're serving. The only thing I can think of is wow. I'm so glad that you and your staff have worked out the logistics. When you first planned it, I was like, whoa, I don't know. This could be crazy, but it seems like it is what our community is needed. So thank you. And please pass that along to the rest of them.
Thanks.
Dr. Zales, did you have anything else under that?
No, we're just happy to answer any questions. Just again, our answered a question for DESE today. They wanted a response to a survey by 4 o'clock today, and some of those things were what we talked about is what I mentioned in there, whether we would even want the National Guard to be a part of food distribution. I said, no, I think we got it covered. And then would we be willing to do this after the school year ends? And we said, well, we haven't really thought about it, but, you know, if that's a place in the time we want to get the National Guard involved, I suppose. We've typically fed kids during summer school, so there's still a lot up in the air with that. But I did want to make sure I point out that the interface with the faith-based community has been real positive.
Yeah, Dr. Deere, this is Jim. I was wondering if any regulations down concerning the SNAP program and our involvement in certifying children.
We've seen nothing yet, Jim. I checked again today just to make sure I hadn't missed anything, but it still says it's coming. I think there's a lot of logistics that they're trying to work out on the statewide end. Really, our main responsibility, the way it reads at this point, would just be to certify people for free reduced lunches. And as I said before, that can change. So some of these people who are not working, you know, they may have been paid lunch before, but with the absence of income, they could certainly qualify now. But we do have online processes for that. And then, of course, we could find a way to make some paper drop-off if we needed to, those kind of things. But we do have the ability to process online applications, so we can process those within a matter of minutes of receiving them. So when that guidance comes, I feel like we'll be able to accommodate our community and what we need to do there.
Okay, thank you.
All right, very good. We move down to the comments section. And Pearl, thank you so much for being a part of our meeting. I heard that you've been talking to some students. What's going on in our district that you can tell us?
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Well, to start off, I think that it's fair to say that as a country and district, the adaptations undertaken to respect social distancing has triggered a learning curve for teachers, students, administrators, and parents as we try and navigate online learning. While my knowledge is limited as to how all students and families are coping, I want to share the student mindset to the best of my ability from my personal experience and what I've heard from others. The student body recognizes that this style of online learning is the best option available for the situation that we're in, and they've definitely expressed gratitude for the school district undertaking a do no harm school work mentality in consideration of individual struggles during this pandemic. It's still noticeable that teachers are still trying to adapt their learning plan and course speed to cover the content that will be needed to succeed in following years. But considering how almost all of our students have been acquainted with Google Classroom and its features during their time in seated classrooms, we've transitioned over to online pretty well as long as you had a device to work on at home. But as others have mentioned, there's also been paper packets as an option if that wasn't available. But the primary problem that I do see with many students, and myself included, is this newfound need to manage time and schoolwork independently and learn without the ability to engage in immediate feedback. Initially, students also struggled with understanding the new grading system and learning process, but as we close in on I believe our second week of online learning, most of us have acquired a solid understanding of our situation. It's a hard time filled with a lot of decision-making for our academic careers as standardized tests like the SAT and ACT are canceled, and AP exams are reformatted, and colleges are readjusting their entrance standards. However, I don't believe it's anything that we can't handle as the technological drawbacks that some students face and unusual circumstances continue to be met by empathy and kindness from our administration and community. And as for our mentality surrounding the situation, seniors are understandably upset about the loss of their final month of high school and the disappointing conclusion to their high school experience. But despite this unfortunate turn of events, I cannot express to you guys how the effort our school district and community is putting in to reschedule traditionally memorable experiences like prom and graduation and maintain these valued memories for seniors and other students has been noticed by students. It's a difficult time for all of us, but the attempts of the community and schools to make these kids feel the accomplishment that they would have otherwise found in their last high school memories is exceptional and recognized by us. The demonstration at the football and baseball fields for the spring athletes who lost their season is something that seniors, especially on social media, have definitely expressed a lot of gratitude for. All right, for the last part of my commentary, I've heard that there might be some more interest in how students are handling the online work, or if you have questions by anything else, I can provide further clarification on how we're learning our content and using online platforms to complete our classwork. No questions? We're good?
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Anybody got any questions for Pearl? I'd just like to know how you're doing. You look great.
Thank you. I'm doing okay. I have taken a lot of online classes before with Launch, but with this new system, I definitely struggled a little bit to manage my time, but right now I'm focusing on studying for the 2 AP tests I have.
Very good.
Okay.
Thank you for logging in with us and being here with us. We appreciate you very much. We miss you.
Thank you.
Do any other board members have comments on events in the school district or any contact with your building that you're connected to or anything like that?
No, ma'am.
I will mention MSBA moved their spring meetings, or canceled their spring meetings, moved the content to online through their website. I believe we have to have at least 4 board members and 1 administrator who commit to being to taking that online course, and we can still earn our governance team award. We have won that several years in a row. I'm hoping we can still do that. If you don't have the content, let me know. I can send you the link. Anything else?
Is there a deadline to that, Charlotte?
I'll have to look.
Okay.
Okay, if there's no other comments, I'll take a motion to adjourn to closed session.
I've got something real quick. Can you hear me?
Oh, go right ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I just thought it might be quick. It'd be a good idea to just give you a quick update from the healthcare side of things and how things are going.
We appreciate that.
First off, I want to applaud all the efforts we've made to social distance. I think it's made a big made a big effect in our area for sure. There's very, very few cases around. Phelps County is currently not tracking any active cases, but they're coming. I know Pulaski County had 15 more cases pop up in the last 2 days. So I just want to reiterate, now is probably the most important time to maintain social distancing. I definitely think it's a great idea to be wearing masks in public at this point, and we need to double down, especially now. Like I said, it's coming, and the better we are at this, the decreased effect on the health system would help out quite a bit. So I think things have gone very well. We're well prepared, have many contingency plans in place. I think we'll be able to weather this storm, but just stay vigilant. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Brian.
Very good. We appreciate the feedback. Just a reminder, there's a couple of dates. The board meeting dates are there at the end of the packet. But I need a motion to go into closed session.
I'll make the motion. We go into closed session. This is Jim.
I will second that.
Thanks,
This is
Tony. And how do you vote? Jim?
Yes.
Carla?
Yes.
Tony?
Yes.
Jane?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Shannon?
Yes.
And we are in closed session. We're going to log out and then come in at the separate closed session link.
Okay.
Okay?